Welcome to the Business of Race podcast, where we examine issues of race and racism, how they impact businesses, and what employers can do to address those issues to make a more effective work environment for everyone. I'm your host, Regina Newkirk-Rucci, Director of Equity for 90 Forward. And today I am joined in the conference room by my Sarah, Kawanza Humphrey, who is the Chief Human Resources Officer at VyStar Credit Union. So welcome to the conference room, Kawanza.
Regina, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, I am just really excited for this conversation today. But, I think in the virtual space so many of us have had to live in for the past few years, I really do miss the office water cooler conversation. And so we always like to have a little bit of one of those before we get into our agenda items. So I know that you have a young son.
I do.
And I know when I have nieces that are older now, but a lot of working and trying to figure out birthday parties for them and sort of what to do and what should the idea be and So have you been to or had any really successful birthday parties that you would give some advice for parents who are trying to come up with some ideas?
Yes. So I would say last year's birthday party was turning 8. That one was successful.
So what'd you do?
I mentioned to you that my son and I moved to Jacksonville just 2 years ago now from Buffalo, New York. And so of course we're both building a network down here. Right. And I think my son has done better than I have because we had this, I'm thinking we'll just have a little, small party at the house. Well, my son had all of these children. It's just like
got really popular.
Yeah. There were children from the neighborhood, his classroom. I'm like, oh, okay, he's done really well here. But he thought it was just going to be like a cake and ice cream at the house kind of a deal. But I actually surprised him with a video game truck that I saw I was riding down the street one day and this video game truck rolled by and I'm like, oh, hey, click, take a picture of it, call them up and they happen to be available. And one of the best things was watching all of the children come running out of the house and seeing this video game truck outside the house and loading up and playing in there. They had a great time. My son's eyes were just like, I thought they were gonna like pop out of his head.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I wouldn't even thought about that as a concept or something that you could do.
I didn't know it existed. I was just I literally
I'm
saw
still
it
in
my
the
commute.
Miss Pac-Man Galaga era. So
I played Atari.
Oh, there you go.
So.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, and granted, this is some years ago, but I thought it was really ingenious. I took my youngest niece to a birthday party. And so they had a science experiments birthday party, right?
I love it.
She'd taken trash bags and like cut them. And so they looked like little lab coats for all of the kids. And they made slime. They made they made a bunch of stuff that like sort of foamed and went everywhere.
All of the hits.
All of the things that would just be completely disgusting and gross. And then they had glitter because my niece had glitter everywhere for a while. But she was so excited. And, it's like, ooh, and we learned something about science too, which, that's the teacher in me. But I thought it was like, that's really to do a home party and to have all these sort of science experiments. And they had made one of those foamy, squishy things and lots of stuff they could take with them. They said the slime was the biggest one. And they could make it different colors. And that was one of the things that had glitter
slime,
in it.
Always.
Yeah.
Always slime is just a hit.
I don't know why, but they do love it. So,
Well, I'm sure that all of the parents were happy after that birthday party.
Yes.
The slime coming home. Because I find slime like on my wall.
We had to have some discussions about where the things that we got from the party would go.
Yes, that is a.
And then I tried to put them up high and hope that she forgot about them.
I love it. I love it. But I love the creativity and the educational aspect. I think it's important that we let our babies know that learning is fun.
Yeah. And I think, having those opportunities that are really memorable, I still think about, I remember one birthday party where my mom made me a porcupine cake. Right? I don't know, I was probably 8, but I still remember that. So creating those memories and just doing something fun and letting the kids, have a good time, have a great memory, enjoy friends, build those networks is what you like to call it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's so important.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, but getting creative, and because that's the other thing, you're like, oh. And like Kim, who's the CEO, she's getting ready to have her 4th. And I'm like, oh, and you got to do a different party for all of them. Yes. You need some ideas. So,
yes. So if that helps, please,
right?
Kim, take the idea.
Yeah, right. There you go. Now you got video game and the science experiments right
slime.
There for you.
Yes.
And you can make slime.
And you can make slime.
Hey, she's got a couple of kids that'd be excited about that.
So she may need to just kind of divide that up a little bit. Slime for one party.
Ready.
The volcano for another party. Yes. Divide that up, Kim.
Right. Just divide it up and then ask everybody for sleep for a gift for your birthday. That's it.
Absolutely. Now we know what to do. Send Kim spa certificate.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to move into our agenda topic for today.
Okay.
And I'm really so thrilled to have this conversation with you because you are in HR.
Yes.
Right. And so today's agenda topic is talking about creating a DEI culture in an organization. And lots of times it starts in your wheelhouse, right?
Yes.
So, there's been so much talk about DEI. And I think that one of the challenges that we're currently facing is the fact that DEI isn't always done well.
Yes.
And when it isn't done well, employees can grow to resent it, can see it as this burden or this extra thing that we have to do for blah, blah, that kind of response. Whereas in organizations where it is done really well, it's baked in. People don't even really think about it to some extent. And it makes for a more productive environment. Employees are happier.
Yes.
They stay longer.
Yes.
And so I think a lot of employers want that, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that you have to build that culture well. And so to get those kinds of results, sort of starting from the beginning, if I am brand new to the DEI space, right? I'm not aware that there's any major problems, but we aren't doing as much as we could do intentionally to ensure that, that we've got the most diverse workforce that we can, that things are equitable, that people really feel included. I've just really been trying to focus on making sure people know what their jobs are. We've got people to do it and that they do them well, right? All right. So I'm going to venture into this DEI thing.
Yes.
What are some things that organizations really ought to be looking at or doing in that initial stage to create that kind of culture? Because I know VyStar has a phenomenal culture.
Thank you.
And so you all obviously have done it successfully and you're in the fruits of that.
Yes.
Right. So for people starting off, what do you do?
Yeah. So when I think back to VyStar's journey in this space, and we haven't been on the journey very long, I want to be very clear about that. We took a look at it and said, this needs to go in HR, right? Because HR is all about people and process. And I think when you're starting out on this journey, those are probably the two lenses that you really need to bring to the process. So, and let me be clear. Like I said at the top, I just came to the company 2 years ago. So our CEO started out on this journey. He's been with the company for 6 years. We've been on a DE&I journey now for about 4 years. But it starts at the top, right? So number one, you have to have your leadership on board, and like I said at the top, from the CEO to even at VyStar, our board of directors are even involved as well, and we report out on a regular basis to our board on where we stand from a DE&I perspective.
Well, and that's an important part. I don't want to skip, because I think we don't talk about that a lot now, and I don't know that you get more board-ish than a big board, right?
Yes, yes.
So it's not just the CEO. The board has to be bought into this. This is a direction we're moving in. This is a value that we have as an organization. Yes. This is something we feel is important, and is something that we should be looking at and have goals, metrics, et cetera, on regularly.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to give that a little bit of extra light, because I don't think we talk about that pretty much at all.
Absolutely. No. And you're absolutely right. And, if you want to go on this journey and you want to do it right, as you said, some companies can launch out, and the employees can reject the process a bit because it seems, a tad bit disingenuous, know. But if you want to hold yourselves accountable, like I said, you have to have that buy-in from the top, and having the board buy-in really helps us to ensure that we're holding ourselves accountable to the work, because it's important. As you said, we believe happy people are productive people. We want to walk the walk and of our purpose, which is to do good, and our core value to lead by example. So if you're going to do that, you have to build it into business practice, and you'll even see work related to DE&I inside of our company's strategic plan. So we're looking at that, examining it over a 1-year process, and then also a 1-year time period, also out through where do we see ourselves in 5 years.
Okay. I'm going to make a note about the strategic plan, because I want to come back to that, because I think that's another important part of that. So you said people and processes. Yes. Those are the two things that sort of the HR space, and those are the two things that you should start with. Yes. All right. Yes. So on the people side, what are the things that I should be doing or I should be looking at?
So first thing we did was we built a team. So we have a complete department that is dedicated to the work of D&I, but also keeping an eye on our culture and making certain that employees of VyStar have a sense of belonging and psychological safety. So that team, and this is getting also to the process side of it as well. That team, the very first thing that they did was to build a policy. We're a financial institution, right? So we're big on our policies. But the policy showed what or demonstrates to us what we are going to do on a regular basis to build DE&I into our business practice. So from a people perspective, it's important to recruit people that are passionate about the work, number one, but then also to empower that team to, again, build processes that you can embed into your business operations. And I think it's also important. One of the things that I did when I got on board was to named the leader of the department as a senior vice president, so that individual had a title both within the company, but then also out in the community that really says this is a high-ranking official within the company. They have the right, the space, the ability to speak on behalf of the company's efforts, and also to give that decision making and empowerment.
Right. So it's not only having the title that shows the weight and the importance of the role, but it also puts you into some of those decision-making conversations.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Where
We talk
that needs
about
to be
being
considered.
at the table.
Being at the table.
Yes.
You're at the table.
Yes.
SVPs are at the table.
You are at the table. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So now I want to talk about switching over to processes a little bit. So you've got the people, you've got a team, you've got people who are really, really focused on what you're doing. Now you're saying that you gave them power to really address the processes and into business operations. So I always say that because that's my number one thing. I'm like, if DEI is not embedded into the work you do, if it's not helping you meet your organizational goals, if it's this thing off to the side, it's never going to be successful. All right. But what are some of those processes? Because you mentioned the strategic plan, you talked about business units, right?
Yes.
What are some of the processes? Because maybe I am just thinking, well, I'm going to make sure that we hire diverse staff, and I'm going to make sure that we've got a couple of cultural luncheons, and we've got some inclusion days. We celebrate a variety of holidays, and we've got a little memo in the newsletter about stuff going on in the community, right? That's some people's thought processes around what DEI entails, but you're saying something completely different.
Yes.
So what goes into that process piece?
Yes. So first, working with the senior team in the organization, and again, the board of directors, I mentioned the strategic plan, to ensure that D&I is embedded into the company's plans over the next several years, right? So I can tell you that one of the things that every company's business plan is going to focus on is talent, right? And for us, we took a look and said, okay, we want to be certain that we have teams that mirror the communities that we're in. For us, our members are the core of our work at VyStar. So we want to be certain that our employees reflect the communities that we're in, so that when our members come in to do business with us, they feel seen and heard. And when we think about diversity and inclusion, we're not just thinking about you've heard of it, those traits that you can see above, the iceberg or the glacier. We're also looking below so that we can get to that lived experience.
So it's not just
as
race
well.
and gender, for instance.
Absolutely not. We want to be certain that we're getting lived experience as well, and certainly that comes across race and gender as well, right? So really very excited about how the team, went about that work. And as I talk about having a team that is dedicated to DE&I, if you're going to embed this into your business operations, there has to be collaboration, right? So the team has worked with talent acquisition, our employee relations. We have HR business partners on our teams, and I'll touch on the HR business partners. They have an agenda that they utilize to meet with leaders on a monthly basis, and they're going through how's everything going with you and your team? What are the challenges? But then also, what's the makeup of your team? Our DE&I team built a dashboard that shows metrics of what teams are composed of, and our HR business partners can go into that dashboard inside of their meetings with leaders and talk about the numbers.
Okay, so now you're getting to one of my favorite topics, because I think this is also important, right?
Yes.
You're going to have to build into your plans a way of capturing data.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't have the metrics to know what your employee pool is, who's coming in, who's coming out, even looking at intersectionality, if certain departments, because all departments are not created equal, right?
No.
And so one department might be great, but another department's really struggling. and then also being able to look at that in terms of levels of leadership.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
I worked for a bank, and the mortgage department was not great as far as promoting women. They weren't. Now marketing, fantastic, right?
Yes.
Commercial banking, great. But there was a challenge in mortgage. But if you were just looking at the organization as a whole, you wouldn't have seen it.
You wouldn't. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So that ability to be able to dissect the data, you've got to have the data, and you've got to be able to dissect it to see where you may have some challenges in certain areas.
Absolutely. And on that point around data, if I can just add this and connect this to my point on collaboration, we are actually right now launching out on a journey with our advanced analytics team to help us slice and dice the data even more to make it relevant. Data tells a story, right?
It does.
So to make certain that we are getting information through the data that tells a story to the leader that shows them how to build an effective workforce.
And so I think that's really important to think about, what is the story that you need told? What information are you looking for?
Yes.
Where do you have challenges?
Absolutely.
If you've got a problem with you've got a lot of people leaving.
I was just going to say attrition, because you may be able to recruit individuals in, but can you get them to stay?
Right.
And I am not going to pretend for even one moment to be a data scientist, but I love their work, and the things that they are able to do are just phenomenal. And, as I said, as we're on this journey to help our leaders build a more effective workforce, this data can show trends and can help us get ahead of when someone may be getting ready to attrite, so we can get behind, what's happening, what's their experience, and then how can we dial them in and stop this event from happening before we lose top talent.
Last season, we had a guest on the podcast who was with Google, and they had done the analytics, looking at, again, the intersectionality, right? Yes. So they were looking at the race of employees, but then they were looking at race and gender. Then they were looking at race, gender, and age, and looking at where they were in the life cycle of the organization when people were leaving, right? So Asian women over the age of 50 were leaving at a really high rate. Wait a minute, what's happening?
What's happening?
And a really good data analytics team can assist you in sort of seeing things that you wouldn't see just with the naked eye looking at your organization. Hey, we're doing well.
Yes. And the background of the data science team as well, they're coming to us and actually bringing forth, additional metrics or items that we can look at as an organization. So again, that's why I say the collaboration is key. And if you want to embed it into business operations, you have to have that buy-in across all of the lines of business.
Well, and I also think that lots of times, because there are still people who really think about DEI as being the warm and fuzzy, and we're serious, we're about making money.
Absolutely.
Right. But the data will help.
DEI is about making money.
It is about making money.
Yes, this is your opportunity.
It should definitely be about making money.
It is. It's your opportunity to, again, encourage thought leadership, to be more creative and innovative. And, I would say that one of the things that we pride ourselves in at VyStar is innovation. And, how can we be new, better, different?
Right.
And if you want to have a team like that and a team that's also engaged. I will add that, because we also know that engaged employees have higher productivity rates as well. So if you want that, having a DE&I practice that's strong and, again, embedded into your operations will get you to where you want to be from a profitability standpoint.
So, and I'm not going to ask you for a specific example at VyStar. Okay. But I also think sometimes people struggle with this concept of DE&I being embedded into business operations. Like they're not the same, right? Yes. So for somebody who might be struggling with that, can you give a good example of how we might be looking at a line of business as far as an operational goal that still has a D&I component or something embedded into it as far as the metrics or what we're trying to achieve?
What we're trying to achieve. So, I will say, from the perspective of VyStar, we're looking at our talent, and we want to build strong teams. So with that, I'll tie it to an HR process from a recruitment perspective, right? Mm-hmm. We're working with talent acquisition to ensure that we have always a pool of candidates mm-hmm. that are diverse, and we challenge the team to say, if you are constantly fishing in the same sea, you're going to catch the same type of fish. So, casting a wider net. Mm-hmm. An operational practice that we have as well is doing panel interviews for positions, especially our positions that are higher ranking, our assistant vice president, senior vice president positions. We really want to ensure that we're working to build a diverse pool there, because again, those are the leaders of the organization that are at the proverbial table. Mm-hmm. Right? And will lead the credit union into the future. Other decisions around is practices that we've put in place is our DE&I team came to us and said, hey, from a recruitment standpoint on entry level positions, we'd like to remove the credit. The credit background, right? Mm-hmm. The credit check. That is something that a lot of institutions have that, and you do need it. It's required. Mm-hmm. Yes, and trust me, for some positions, it's a requirement based upon licensings or mm-hmm. Positions that or access. Right. But we made a decision that where we could, we would drop the requirement.
Well, and I think that's something too where processes you've had in place. I mean,
mm-hmm.
there are a lot of things we do in corporate America that we do because we've always done them.
Yes.
Right?
Our dress code. We and so you have a financial background as well. Mm-hmm. So you know. But again, if you want to make employees feel welcome and really that they can come into the office and be their authentic selves, right? The dress code and looking at even that policy mm-hmm. alone can be huge, can mm-hmm. be a major one.
Right. Dress code, I think, is one. Another one is college degrees.
Oh, yes.
You don't need a college degree for every job.
You do not. And right. And one of the things that we did there was to look at experience level and to add that in because we know that women and other individuals of minorities, we just have this tendency to say if we don't meet every single criteria on that.
Oftentimes we don't even apply.
we won't apply.
Right.
Whereas someone else may look at it and say, "Oh, I can do
that.
I can do other duties as assigned,"
right.
And they apply.
Right. And so you wind up some of the processes and requirements you have in place already sort of short circuit who you get in the door.
Who you're going to get in. Yeah.
And the best employee that you have could be out there and never apply because of some of those things that you could easily tweak.
Yes.
And make that a little bit wider entryway
mm-hmm.
to get folks in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So we talked about people and we talked about the processes. We also talked about data, which I think is huge. But is there anything else for anybody who's really looking at DEI? We want to do this. Any words of wisdom or things that you would say that need to be on their radar for things that might happen or come up or
yes,
this process?
If you're going to go out on this journey, you have to have, please, employee resource groups. Those employee resource groups at VyStar, we call them VyStar resource groups. So they're VRGs.
VRGs, okay.
And the work that they do, I am so grateful for. And it's that's where I think that you can really look at, you can get after how do you create that sense of belonging, right? And I know you mentioned at the top, celebrations and the like. Our VRGs have really gone above and beyond to educate and to create these networks, right? And something else you mentioned at the top was remote work, right? And the impact of remote work. Being a part of an employee resource group gives an individual the opportunity to become visible to senior management and to develop skills that they may not be able to develop in the particular position that they're in, right? But it's that opportunity as well to talk through topics that are important to your community, right? And they have done, and then through participation, I should say, right? They've educated others along the way. So, I mean, they've built in, I can think of there was a session done by our Vi Pride and our we call it WAVE. It's our women's network. They did a session on surviving abuse. They did it in partnership with Hubbard House. And they even brought in, talk about collaboration, our corporate security team to talk through with leaders, what are some of the signs that you may see when who could potentially be hurting.
Right.
They've brought in speakers. They've done book clubs, professional development, things that these team building opportunities, right? And the opportunity to invest in yourself as an employee that you just may not necessarily get out of your standard team meeting, right? So it's just it's wonderful, and it's a great way to be able to gain information and to learn firsthand.
And I would add to that, I think ERGs, BRGs, VRGs can be essential in an organization. I think if you're at the beginning part of this, number one, sort of allowing those to be sort of coming from both ends, right? It has to come from the bottom and from the top. I think from the bottom, the what the groups are, who do we need, how do we need to get together? From the top, you have the ability to come together. We want to hear from you, and here's some funding to make sure that things can happen.
Funding is critical.
Yes.
And we've given funding. And the other thing that we've done, and it's new to us this year, is we've also look to embed the work into the performance management process as well, by giving a portion of the rating to individuals that are active in the VRGs, as well as their community involvement, because community involvement is really a critical portion of the VyStar culture as well. So instead of people feeling like, well, this is something extra that I'm doing, it's also an opportunity for them to impact what their overall performance has been for the year. So it's adding that value.
Well, I pay attention to what's on my performance evaluation, right? So that makes sense. If it's going to be valued in the organization, it ought to show up in my evaluation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I encourage employees all the time to, when we come down to the performance review, this is your time for you to tell your story. Mm-hmm. And again, looking at, women and minorities may tend not to tell the story, the full picture, not giving themselves credit where credit is due. But that's important because at the end of the day, your performance review is going to have a direct impact on your merit increase, right? Mm-hmm. And your merit increase is going to have direct impact on your family's bottom line and your ability to build generational wealth.
Right.
So, why not include this work?
And I think, you said women and minorities, and I think that often comes to issues of those groups have really been encouraged or dissuaded. It feels like bragging, right?
Yes.
Like this is some stuff I need to do. Mm-hmm. I don't want to. Mm-hmm. I'm not akin to talking about me, but one of the things we're also building in those muscles, and those resource groups can assist with that. Yes. And you have to be. Sometimes you have to be your own loudest cheerleader, but you definitely have to be willing to very clearly state who you are, what you've done, and how you are of value to the organization. If I can't make that case, then oftentimes, and I'm the best one to make it, I know what I do all the time, right?
Yes.
But then how am I going to get other people to see? How am I going to get other people to know? Because no one is going to have the whole story of what you've done except for you.
Absolutely. You know you best. Mm-hmm. And the performance review and also the interview, that's your time to tell your story.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. I've got so many more things that I want to talk about, but I'm going to try to be mindful of time. Okay. So as we wrap up, we think about, because we've covered a lot of ground today. Yeah. But again, for people who are just thinking about this at the beginning of the journey, if we had one big takeaway for them, what would you say if you'd missed everything else we talked about? Focus on this. What would you say that is?
Yeah. Having the policy and embedding it into your strategic plan, because really I think that's the roadmap to make certain that you don't get lost along the way. It's a journey. And you have to be accepting of that. There's no way that every organization can get it right all the time, and that's okay. And in those cases, I would say, fail fast, fail forward, but keep on going. Don't stop with the work. Mm-hmm. And I think when you have those types of guardrails in place for yourself and ways to hold yourselves accountable to leadership, and again, your board of directors, that's how you can really be certain that you're going to stay the course and get the work done.
I would agree with that. And so I'm going to actually put my big takeaway with yours. I think you want to have it embedded in policy, and you want to have that backed up by numbers.
Absolutely.
So having some data
yes.
To know what's happening in the organization, where you should be paying attention, where your policy should be focused.
Yes.
And truthfully, especially if we talked about going to the top, right? Mm-hmm. You're at the board of directors level. You need to be able to back up what you're saying.
Absolutely.
And data can really help you do that.
Absolutely.
And then that also helps you know, again, building in accountability, metrics, measurements, all of those things, setting goals, what's realistic, recognizing that this is a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely.
But what kind of ground do we need to cover in XYZ period of time?
Yes.
And the data will help you do that. The policy will make sure that gets done.
Mm-hmm. And if I may, the collaboration piece is key as well. You may have a business unit in-house that can help you with that data. So if there's concern around bringing in a consultant and what those fees may be, you may not have to do that. Mm-hmm. You may have the talent right within your organization to help you get that data and to slice it the way that tells the story most effectively.
And it may not even be in places that you would necessarily go.
Absolutely.
Why'd ask? And especially if there is an additional bonus or incentive to do it. But you may also be able to give people an opportunity to share and shine in some places that they normally don't get to.
Absolutely.
And be excited about the work. Again, sort of building that culture that you're trying to, that culture of belonging.
Yes.
I feel a sense of belonging in places where I've invested, where I've put some work in, where I've got some energy, and had some say-so. So you never know, because the analytical types and the data miners are a variety of places.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
But can really assist you with getting some things done.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Kawanza, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us in the conference room today. I do hope that you will come back another occasion.
I would love it. Thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us today. We always want to encourage you to click that subscribe button, as well as give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you like us so that we can help get this content out to more people. Thank you, thank you, thank you.